A woman walks into a hotel to spend the night, but she is not recognized or respected. She doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't threaten. She just makes one phone call. What happens next changes not only the system, but also the views of those who are used to judging by appearances. This is a story about the quiet power that speaks louder than titles. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you don't miss new stories. The rain began to fall quietly. First as a thin film on the windshield, then more confidently, as drops slapped against the roof of the car. Olivia Morgan watched the windshield wipers as if they were the only thing that moved in time with her thoughts that evening. She had parked in front of the entrance to the Hayden Central Hotel, the flagship of the chain she had owned for 16 years. No one knew. She wasn't going to remind them. She was wearing a soft gray sweater, jeans, and neat dark sneakers. Her hair was pulled back into a low bun, no jewelry, minimal makeup, just a hint of foundation to hide her tiredness. Everything was intentionally simple. She had just flown in from a business meeting in Chicago, tired, a little cold. There was a whole floor of a luxury hotel nearby, but she decided to go in through the main entrance. No bells, no security, no name. The lobby was quiet when she walked in. The reception desk glowed with a steady light, the aroma of expensive tea mingling with the faint scent of wood and new furniture. Behind the desk stood a girl in her mid-20s, a blonde with sleek hair, a perfectly pressed uniform, and a slight, forced smile. Her badge read, Chloe, receptionist intern. "Good evening," Olivia said politely, stopping at the counter. "I need a room for one night. I didn't make a reservation in advance." Chloe bowed her head slightly and began to practice the algorithm as usual. "Sure, just a moment." Pause, fingers on the keys. "Do you have your passport or ID with you?" "Of course." Olivia took out her driver's license and handed it over. Chloe typed something, then froze. "Miss Morgan, unfortunately, we are all booked up today." "Really?" Olivia asked calmly, raising an eyebrow slightly. "Even the standard ones?" "All categories. The hotel is fully booked." Olivia glanced at the board behind the girl, the display that automatically showed available rooms. 2 lines were lit up, Standard Queen and Executive Deluxe. She didn't smile. She just looked. Then she looked back at Chloe. "Are you sure?" Chloe looked slightly nervous, but her voice remained polite. "The system may be delayed in updating. We are really overcrowded. Sorry. I can wait. Until the system updates." "It will take..." The girl hesitated. "I'll check with the manager." She walked away. A minute later, a man in a dark blue jacket appeared, Oscar, the duty manager. He approached with a smile, but immediately glanced at Olivia, assessing her appearance. His politeness was neutral, polished, not personal. "Good evening. I was told that you wanted to stay with us." "I'm afraid everything is really booked for tonight." Olivia paused. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes, ma'am. We've had a large number of group rides and an event on the conference floor. Sorry." "It's a pity, because I was just counting on a warm bed and a little silence. And now I'll have to ask someone from the management to come down." Oscar frowned, but professionally. "May I ask who you want to talk to?" Olivia took out her phone. No emotion. She dialed the number. A short beep. A second. Then a voice. "Brian? It's Olivia. I'm in the lobby, the Hayden Central. I was told you were full." Pause. "No, I wasn't joking." She put the phone away and just stood there. No drama, no pose. But her silence began to fill the hall in a way no speech ever had. 40 minutes later, the doors opened and a man in a raincoat walked into the lobby, briefcase in hand, face tense. Brian Chase, the executive director of internal compliance. He walked past security without saying hello. He saw Olivia and slowed down. "Oh my God," he whispered. "What happened?" "Nothing. Just a check." He looked at the counter, at Chloe, who stood there, pale and barely breathing. At Oscar, who was trying to look unperturbed, but his ears were burning. "You," he began, then stopped himself. "You didn't recognize Miss Morgan?" Silence. "This is our founder, the president of the board of directors. The woman without whose signature this hotel would not have even received a building permit." Oscar swallowed. Chloe blushed. The guard simply turned away. Olivia didn't say a word. She just looked at Brian. "I want a number. Any number. Not on the company's dime." "Of course. Sorry. Everything will be formalized. In person." He didn't ask if she wanted them fired. Not because he was afraid, because he knew she wouldn't say that. She doesn't punish. She shows. As Brian walked her to the elevator, she turned to Chloe. She was still standing at the counter, and it wasn't fear in her eyes. It wasn't anger. It was shame. Real shame. Olivia held her gaze for a second. Then she said, "Power is not clothes. It is a voice, and the ability to look a person in the eye, even if you don't know who he is." The elevator closed, and at that moment, the building became a little quieter. Not from fear, but from understanding. That in this hallway stood a woman who had not proven anything to anyone. She had simply shown what respect looks like when no one knows your name, and that is why she will now be remembered, forever. It had been raining all night. It pounded on the lobby windows, as if reminding the staff of what had happened hours earlier. But no one needed reminding. The energy in the lobby had shifted, as if someone had quietly but decisively rearranged all the furniture without moving it. Chloe stood at the counter, pale, her eyes glued to the screen even though the letters no longer formed words. She could still feel the woman's gaze, not demeaning, not angry, but precise, like a scalpel. With each hour that passed since she'd left, the understanding of what had happened became more acute and more shameful. In an office on the 40th floor in another city, Brian Chase played her voice over in his head. He remembered that flat, "I'm in the lobby, come over." No anger, no demand, just a tone that left no options. He flew out as he was, without a jacket, without a driver. He knew that if she called, it meant the silence was over. And when Olivia Morgan came out of her silence, it was better to be there than in the place of the one who had to explain himself. When he arrived and saw her, calm, direct, holding the same black folder in which she usually carried papers for dismissing top managers, he understood the scale. She was not just confronted with stupidity, she was confronted with a system, the same one they were supposedly reforming. "Tell me," he said quietly in the elevator as they went up together. "What happened?" "It's very simple," she said, not taking her eyes off the mirror in the wall of the cabin. "I walked in. They didn't recognize me. I said I wanted a room. They refused. I showed them they had rooms. They refused again. I explained who I was. They didn't believe me. They called security. Then you. And here we are." He sighed. I don't know what to say. We taught. We conducted trainings. We had materials, instructions. Do you think that respect lives in instructions?" He fell silent. "You know what I realized, Brian?" she continued. "Nobody turns people like me down out of spite. No. They just don't see it. In their worldview, the owner can't look like me. No business card, no jewelry, no escort. Can't be a black woman in a plain coat. They think they're politely turning down a stranger, but in reality, they're building a barrier, an unnoticeable one, but a real one." He nodded, slowly. "You want me to remove them?" She looked at him, a look without emotion. "No. Dismissal is the easy way out. I want them to understand, to go through it, to not just feel ashamed, but to understand, and then to teach others. So, a revision of the entire program? From scratch, and without pathos." I want not slogans, but actions. Less slogans, more mirrors. Let them look at themselves and understand who they didn't see. Later, the next morning, they assembled the staff. No announcements, no presentations. The room was quiet. People were waiting for anyone but her. She walked in alone, unescorted. She wore the same suit she had worn when she walked into the hotel the night before. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, no identifying marks. Many did not recognize her, or pretended not to. But that was enough. She walked to the middle of the room, stood in front of them, not behind the podium, just next to them, and she said, "I'm not going to give you a lecture. I just want you to think back to last night. And think, what would you do if you knew who I was?" A pause. No one answered, just awkward glances, the rustling of air, and tension in the shoulders. "But I'm not here because I want you to be afraid," she continued. "I'm here because I want you to see. Really, every person who walks in here should be treated equally, not because they can buy a penthouse, but because they're human." She glanced around the room. "I'm not firing anyone, but I'm giving you a chance to change and to learn to see. Not a status, but a person. This is not a lecture. This is an invitation to join a new stage." And she went out. Without looking around, Brian stayed. He saw their faces. He saw how some of them were crying, some of them were trembling, some of them were getting angry. It wasn't guilt. It was a meeting with the truth, and it's hard to meet the truth. Later, he approached her in the office. "You were right," he said. "It will work. Not quickly, but it will start." Olivia sat at the table, sorting through notes left by hotel guests. She looked up. "Where does respect begin, Brian?" he thought. "From confession, almost, with a pause, in which you don't put a label, but let the other be themselves, even if you don't know who they are. And this is her power. Calm, deep, real. The one that is impossible to put on, but which is impossible not to feel." Olivia walked into the conference room at exactly 8 in the morning. No delays, no loud footsteps, no warning. A plain beige shirt, soft flat shoes, dark trousers. No logo, no tag, no status symbol. Nothing but a confident posture and a look that made the room quieter. The hotel staff sat in a semicircle. Reception, security, administrators, technical staff, even the catering staff. Almost everyone knew what had happened the day before. Almost no one knew what to say. Brian stood to the side, his arms crossed over his chest. He could feel the tension in the room, but he knew Olivia could handle it. She hadn't come with a threat. She had come with a mirror. She stopped in the center of the room and scanned the faces. Some were hiding their eyes. Some were standing up straight as if expecting a reprimand. Some were nervously looking at their phones as if expecting an urgent distraction. She took her time speaking. Let the tension build. Sometimes it was the only way to get attention. "Good morning," she said finally. "I'm not going to lecture you. I'm here to talk, straight, no papers." Pause. The room remained quiet. "Yesterday I walked into the lobby of this hotel, without calling first, without security, without a tie and a big name on my card. I was standing in my place, in my company, in the building I built and invested years of my life in, and not one person recognized me. Not one person asked who I was. Not one person offered me their trust, just because my face didn't match their expectations." Several people slumped in their chairs. Chloe, the girl from the reception, sat motionless, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm not angry. I'm not vindictive. I'm tired, not of you, of the repetitive pattern that people like me are forced into. Women, black, older, dressed simply. I'm a person who proves every day that she can be someone, even if she doesn't look like someone." She walked a little to the side, her arms at rest, her movements calm. "I didn't come to fire you. I came to show you what an invisible mistake looks like. It doesn't scream. It doesn't hit you in the face. It just pretends you don't exist. Now her voice became a little deeper, not louder, but more weighty. Imagine, you walk into a room and no one notices you. You speak, you are interrupted. You introduce yourself, and no one believes you. Because you have the wrong skin color, the wrong hairstyle, the wrong logo on your bag. Can you imagine? Now imagine that you live like this every day. In a store, in a bank, in a taxi, at the reception. Every day is a fight for recognition before you have time to say a word. Someone lowered their head. One of the guards blushed. Olivia stopped and looked at him. You probably followed the protocol yesterday. But you know what's interesting? The protocol can always be followed with respect. You can ask for documents and still recognize the person. You can follow the procedure and still not humiliate. She returned to the center. I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to see. Because if we are a company that says we value the customer, we have to start by valuing the person. In any form. At any age. With any face. Brian nodded, as if something inside him had calmed. She had said exactly what she needed to say. No threats, no drama, just the truth, pure and simple. We will launch a new internal course, she continued. Not about smiles and standards, but about awareness. About how not to fall into a stereotype, even if it seems safe to you. About how not to divide people into those who look like guests and those who look like strangers. She walked up to the stand where they usually hang charts and corporate diagrams. She hung up a single sheet. There was only one sentence on it. Politeness is polite, but respect is human. She turned around. I'll give you space. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm not humiliating anyone. But you must understand who you were yesterday. And who you want to be tomorrow. And then we'll meet again. In a month. And we'll talk. Like adults. Olivia left the room with the same gait she had entered. Quietly. Without folders. Without an entourage. Only silence remained behind her. Dense, important, real. The one in which something new begins. The one in which people begin to hear not the rules, but themselves. And each other. Olivia spent the night in a regular room. Not a presidential suite, not a penthouse, not an apartment with panoramic windows and automatic curtains that open at dawn on schedule. No. She chose this room herself, regular, cozy. With a low ceiling, rough wood on the nightstand, thick curtains, and a chair by the window. She wanted to experience the hotel not as a hostess, but as a person. The same as everyone else. The same as she was not seen yesterday. She woke up early, without an alarm clock. The morning light seeped through the edge of the curtain, gilded the corner of the table, and fell on the pillow with its edge. She stretched, stood up, walked barefoot on the cold floor, turned on the light, and looked at herself in the mirror. Still the same woman, the same features, the same look. Only the silence inside became denser, not muffled, meaningful. She knew the day would be special, because she would be among people again, not as a controller, not as an icon, but as a reminder. She went down to the common restaurant for breakfast, slowly, calmly, without an escort. She sat by the window. She ordered an omelet, black tea, and toast with jam. At the next table sat two employees, a young administrator and a concierge. They did not recognize her. They whispered about the new program that had been announced yesterday. About that woman. About how awkward everything had been. They say she could fire everyone, said one. And she just came out. Without screaming. Without anything. The second one answered. It's even scarier somehow. Olivia smiled and took a sip of tea. She didn't need to be recognized. The main thing was to know what it was like to see. Later, she went on her rounds. She walked through floors she hadn't been to in years. She went into the technical wing. She greeted the maid, who stopped in fear when she said, "Good morning." She went into the laundry room. She looked into the kitchen. Everywhere, the same reaction. Silence, awareness, excitement. But she didn't linger. She didn't comment. She just looked. She just was. That afternoon, she met with Brian in a small conference room. "Do you want us to form a committee?" he asked. "Or an internal group? You know, it's fashionable these days to institutionalize everything." Olivia shook her head. "No, I don't want committees. I want changes not to start from above, but from within. Let every employee at least once find themselves in the shoes of someone they didn't expect. Let them learn to look before they judge. Do you want to launch live situations? Yes, secret guests, real stories, not for evaluation, but for training, without threat, without protocol, only experience." Brian nodded. "It will change the system, or at least crack according to her routine, and that's already enough." After the meeting, she returned to her room, not because she was tired, but because she wanted silence. She sat down in a chair by the window, unfolded a notebook, and began to write. Not a speech, not a report. Her own. About yesterday. About today. About how easy it is to be invisible when you don't live up to expectations. And how difficult it is to teach the world that what's important isn't always dressed in brands. In the evening, as the sun was setting, she went downstairs again. The lobby was crowded with check-ins, meetings, suitcases. She stopped at the counter. Chloe, the same one from the reception, was working today. Their eyes met. The girl froze. Olivia came closer. "How's your day going?" "Okay, ma'am. Thank you." "Without tension?" "I'm learning. I'm looking into your eyes. I understand." Olivia nodded. "That's a good start." And she left. That night, she went to bed early again. But she didn't fall asleep for a long time. It wasn't the events that were spinning in her head, but the faces, the shadows in her eyes, the trembling fingers, and the silence that was now audible. She knew that no one else in this building would say, "We just didn't understand," because now they did. And when she fell asleep, she didn't dream of the hotel, but of the road. Straight, open, without signs, and the feeling that others were following her, not because she was the first, but because she didn't pass by. A month had passed, since Olivia Morgan had entered her own hotel and remained for everyone just a woman in a sweater. Since her voice, calm, without shouting, had sounded louder than any orders. During this time, a lot had changed in the Hayden chain. Not externally. The interiors remained the same, the counters still shone, tea was served in the same porcelain. But the atmosphere had become different. It had become attentive, honest. In each hotel in the chain, there was now a small poster with an inscription composed by Olivia herself. First, the person, then, the status, then, the rest. It wasn't a marketing campaign, it wasn't PR, it was a consequence. An internal change that started not with slogans but with a look in the eye. They started with trainings, not standard ones but real ones. They played out scenes, invited inconspicuous guests, analyzed real cases in which employees made mistakes not because they wanted to, but because they hadn't learned to see. Olivia didn't show up at these meetings. Her name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew where it all came from that same woman who once stood in the hallway and who was not seen. She was monitoring it herself, but from afar. She worked quietly with the team, passing on materials, editing scripts, building a structure. She didn't want to be a heroine. She wanted results. So that one day another woman, dressed simply, without makeup, with a hard day behind her, could walk into the lobby of any hotel and not have to explain why she deserved to be noticed. One evening, in another city, in another state, Olivia walked into a Hayden hotel she had never been to before. No warning, no call, just like always. The lobby was bright and modern, with wide windows and soft music. A young man stood behind the counter. His name was on his badge, Kyle. He looked up and smiled. It was a real smile, not automatic, not corporate. "Good evening. Welcome to Hayden." How can I help you? I would like a room for one night. No reservation. Any available? Of course. I'll have a look now. He didn't ask, Are you sure you have the money? He didn't look her up and down. He just opened the system. A couple of clicks. There is a standard and an improved one. Which one is more convenient for you? The standard will do. Excellent. Your document, please, and the signature here. She handed over the ID. He looked. He froze for a moment. Then he looked at her again. His face remained calm, but recognition flashed in his eyes. His expression did not change. He only said softly, Thank you, Miss Morgan. Enjoy your stay. She nodded. Thank you, Kyle. I went up to my room, the same as then, ordinary, cozy, warm. She sat down by the window. She took a notepad. She wrote, Today I was nobody, and I was still seen. That's the goal. In the morning, she left her room and headed to the counter to hand in her key. At that moment, a woman approached her, about 40 years old with a manager's badge. Her voice trembled slightly. Sorry to bother you. Can I have a minute? I just wanted to say thank you for everything, for starting. We're all here learning again, to see, to not be afraid, and not to hide behind procedures. Olivia looked at her carefully, then she smiled softly. I didn't start it. I just didn't pass by. She glanced back at the door. There was movement in the lobby. The staff were talking to the guests, with interest, with respect. People were coming in, and they didn't feel like they had anything to prove. It was a victory, not a loud one, a real one. She went outside. The sun was shining in her face. The city lived its own life, but now there was at least one place where every person could feel they are seen, not because of their name, but simply because they exist.